Hey guys, what's up? Finally, the most requested headphone amplifier to be reviewed around here arrived at my front door about 3 weeks ago, and I'm ready to give you my final impressions about it. This is Burson's Audio Prime headphone amplifier and preamplifier, and since it's called Grand Tourer, I suggested adding some red accents that would be matching with its GT moniker, and you can already expect my reaction when I started unboxing it and seeing it so vivid. They liked this color scheme so much that all future Soloist GT devices will be coming with the same red accents, and I can't tell you enough how happy I am about this. This is their flagship, no compromise, fully discreet, fully balanced Class A headphone amplifier that is going for $2,500 or for $28 if you are choosing that Supercharger 5A. Alright folks, let's unbox it, let's check what's inside that package and then how it sounds. Let's go! On the outside, it looks pretty much the same with their flagship conductor and timekeeper units, retrofitting it with a cool case that tripled its surface area, improving heat dissipation and service life. But since its internal power supplies and amplifier stages are working at their maximum, they adopted active cooling with the help of a silent Noctua fan. Noctua coolers aren't new to me, as I'm using them for more than 10 years now in desktop PCs, and I'm currently using one in my Corsair One for its silent operation. As for controls, there's a 4-pin XLR output, a regular 1/4-inch headphone jack, a 3.5mm microphone input, a few buttons like on-off, input and output selectors, settings, and flip the screen button. There's a monochrome OLED screen in the middle and a volume wheel to its right that offers exactly 99 steps. On its back you'll find 2 pairs of XLR and RCA inputs, so you can easily connect up to 4 sources at once, and since it can work as a preamplifier, you'll find a pair of XLR and RCA analog outputs. A subwoofer output will come in handy not only with your stereo, as it can be used with headphones as well. 3 triggers and an additional microphone input will seal the deal for you. As for tech inside it, we're dealing here with a fully discrete, fully balanced input to output preamplifier and headphone amplifier that is working in a deeper Class A operation. It uses 8 output transistors, 2 are creating an amplifier module, and it has 4 modules for a fully balanced signal. It outputs some very serious power, more exactly 10 watts on its balanced output and half of that on its single-ended output. It uses 3 V6 vivid op-amps per channel, achieving an incredible driving force. And if you are into op-amp rolling, you can do that too. Last but not least, it uses not 1, but 2 Muses volume control chips buffered individually that can be found in the world's best preamplifiers. Alright guys, I'm ready for some music, so let's hit some eardrums. Sound-wise, if you are getting bottomless bass notes, rumbling bass notes, smooth vocals, wild headbangs and air guitars, well, droning all that treble glare, then you are definitely listening to a Burson-made amplifier. The family resemblance is quite big, but this time around they updated it to be in line with the best solid-state amplifiers that were released as of late. And to me it sounded simply as a shift-delete your head-fi account type of amplifier, because there is so much to praise about it and so little to nitpick. In terms of pure sonics, finally there is a massive left-right soundstage, a much nicer depth, something at which past Burson's designs weren't really that super impressive. I'm getting so much more in terms of detail retrieval, so finally there is a see-through transparency, and things that were previously just blurry in the background are right now just a lot more contoured, a lot more focused. And if you like hearing things that you are not supposed to, then it sounded clearer and more detailed compared to any other amplifier that was sitting on my table, with the exception of the benchmark HPA4 that was by a hair more detailed and more transparent. I'm also glad that wild and crazy dynamic swings are still on board. You should hear what it does to those Odyssey LCD4. When they hopped on my head, I just couldn't refrain from smiling, from toy tapping, from headbanging. It was really a very fun and quite engaging experience. And the same can be said about the Hypsos Susvara, because it fully drove them without problem. Dynamics were quite crazy, especially when supercharged with 5 amperes of clear current. I personally don't enjoy overly smooth or slow mellow type of amplifiers. Give me dopamine rush. I don't know, this is who I am, this is what works for me. And this is really how I see the Soloist GT. So I see it as a wild Mustang that roams the fields, that refuses to hit the brakes and being domesticated. So expect an exquisite transient response from this one, an amazing start and stop of the driver, so super fast decay of the notes. It got the nerves, that is for sure. There's an impressive impact to be had with planar magnetic headphones, as it shifts gears like a sports car. As you might know, audio devices are extremely sensitive to noise, especially electrical or electromagnetic noise that is coming from your wall. And that is precisely why I never economized on clean power delivery at my place. So when we moved around 3 years ago or something like that, I made sure that my entire electrical system would be replaced, so I put much thicker and higher purity copper wires. Lastly, in my office, that is somewhere around there, I put even thicker copper wires, and I made sure that there is a dedicated power line to my office, so that would not interfere with the rest of the home appliances. Last but not least, I've also added a passive power conditioner at my headphone setup and another one in my stereo, so I'm quite crazy about power delivery. Does that mean that Supercharger 5A or Ferrum Hypsos wouldn't be improving its performance? Of course they will be improving even further. So in the case of the Supercharger, dynamics didn't improve, but noise floor went down. Detail retrieval went a little bit higher, and it's quite difficult giving you an exact number, but I believe around 10% of improvement, so there is still quite a lot of improvement. However, if I wouldn't have all those improvements that I have at my place, I believe that those 10% could be 15 at your place, could be 20, I don't know. And in the end, I still believe that it offered a decent improvement, just plug and play, and suddenly your Soloist GT will sound just clearer, more detailed, and it's not that expensive. Then I moved to the Ferrum Hypsos power supply, which is considerably more expensive, and for the same amount you can get yourself a Composer 3X DAC, maybe a Soloist 3X, so this is quite an expensive power supply. With it I wanted a nicer detail retrieval. Sadly I didn't get that. I wanted a lower noise floor compared to Supercharger. Again, I didn't get that. I wanted better dynamics, maybe a better punch in my chest. Again, I didn't get that. However, there was quite a clear difference in terms of treble. So all traces of digitus, of listening fatigue, of treble glare, all that was completely gone. And it was just a little bit, just a small traces of that with the Supercharger. With that being said, Supercharger still looks like a much better deal to me, and you cannot go wrong with it. In terms of noise floor, when power goes up, noise follows, and this is really how all amplifiers are working, so it's not something new. All their past creations had a little bit of residual noise with ultra-sensitive IEMs, and I believe that Grand Tourer is no different. Sadly, Supercharger 5A and Ferrum Hypsos didn't help it that much, because again, on low gain I could detect that noise with ultra-sensitive IEMs like FI9. On mid gain and high gain it was a little louder, and when I was engaging its user menu it was even a little more louder. So again, suggesting that its CPU just adds a little bit of noise. Secondly, on its first volume position out of 99, it was already moderately loud with my IEMs, and all those things combined are telling me one thing, that it was not made to be used with IEMs. It was made to be used with something like this, and that is perfectly fine. However, you can solve that noise issue by adding an iFi Audio IEM Match Plus. That thing is just a must-buy accessory, especially if you are using IEMs with desktop gear. In terms of power output, all my headphones, with the exception of Hypsos Susvara, worked great on low and mid gain, and I was rarely passing past 60 out of 99 volume position, so I had all the signs of well-driven headphones. I had unlimited headroom. I had just an effortless presentation. Everything was just nicely controlled. So all my headphones worked really just outstanding. Flux Lab Acoustics Volot and Ferrum Or plus Hypsos just changed my preconceptions about headphone amplifiers, because those two were really nicely driving the high-performance Susvara, and I'm easily adding the Soloist GT into the same short list of amplifiers. While Susvara stays on my head just mostly, so very often, because it easily sniffs all those flows of my DACs, of my amplifiers. It was quite an explosive experience with the Odyssey LCD4, because I had plenty of fun time with the LCD4. It was a very impactful, very fun type of experience. I was always headbanging, always smiling with the LCD4. It was quite an outstanding experience. With the Hypsos Susvara, I was at around 55 to 70 out of 99 on high gain. So again, I had plenty of headroom remaining on top. It sounded really nice with them. So again, dynamics weren't really botched. Soundstage didn't collapse on me. So again, they sounded really nice on the Soloist GT. I would say at around 91 to 93% compared to two benchmark AHB2 power amplifiers. So again, just an amazing performance from the Soloist GT with all my headphones. In terms of transients, I'm getting chills and goosebumps only when music is speaking to me, and only when bass notes are landing some precise hits on my eardrums and are being sustained in a very effortless manner. If I'm not getting the all-inclusive treatment from an amplifier, then for me it's just dead on arrival. So for me, dynamics and transients are very important, but you already know that. So Soloist 3X, its smaller brother, had that glowing rockstar personality in this department, so it was always impactful and speedy sounding. But Grand Tour is simply a much scarier creature, because the deeper and more stronger bass notes were always landing on my eardrums. It was just merciless with fast, impactful tunes as electronica, and this is really what I've listened the most with the Grand Tour. So from a substantial number of headphone amplifiers, I believe that Grand Tourer fights for the first or second place in terms of transients, and this is really how good it is in this department. This wasn't really a novelty to me, because all their past doings, all their past amplifiers were quite impressive in this department. But of course, being a flagship amplifier, it's something else altogether. And as far as transients go, in my case, a fully discrete Class A amplifier worked the best, just adding a hint of mid-range presence, a machine gun-like speed, and a thunderous slam and impact. Moving on to transparency, resolution, or detail retrieval, just call it as you want. Living for quite some time now with very clean sounding amplifiers like benchmark HPA4, like Topping A90, I'm not that easily impressed in this department. And still, Soloist GT just revealed itself as Mr. Clean, so always sounding very transparent, very clean, just disappearing completely from my acoustic chain, and fully preserving all those small nuances, small details. I have the highest respect for the audio components that aren't adding distortion, because with such devices I'll be listening to the truth alone, and I can easily add the Soloist GT into that short list of amplifiers. A high transparency goes hand in hand with detail retrieval, so it was not a challenge spotting all those micro details in my music that I know for a lifetime. And long story short, Soloist GT is one hell of a clean sounding amplifier, and it will easily focus on whatever you please. And I can go on and on how clean and transparent it sounded, because there is no other way to describe its performance. On Chi-Fi amplifiers, I'm getting some dryness in the mid-range, and I'm not getting some natural textures. Luckily, I can spot all those on the Grand Tourer. On the flip side, this is not your overly warm, overly smooth type of amplifier. It will not roll off the treble output, so they went with a reference tuning with this amplifier. There is indeed a little of that Class A sound that feels powerful, effortless and easygoing, but it isn't overly done. Moving on to Soundstage, when listening to loudspeakers, the channel crosstalk of your amplifier doesn't matter that much, because What is coming from the right speaker you can hear with your left ear, but you don't want that in your headphone amplifiers because besides distortion, channel crosstalk is really one of the worst enemies of headphone amplifiers because with a very high channel crosstalk, you'll have little to no room for soundstage, for notes to play around your head. And this is really one of the reasons, but not the most important one, but one of the reasons why balanced power moved to headphone amplifiers about a decade ago, a little bit, 15 years, something like that. So with headphone amplifiers, you want the lowest possible channel crosstalk, so you can have the widest possible sound. And it seems that Grand Tourer has the lowest channel crosstalk from all Burson-made headphone amplifiers. So, long story short, it sounded bigger than my own benchmark HPA4, it sounded bigger than Sparkos Labs Aries, it sounded bigger than Ferrum Or and Hypsos stack, it sounded bigger than all Chi-Fi amplifiers. There was just a single headphone amplifier that sounded slightly bigger, and that, my friends, is Flux Lab Acoustics Volot. That was by a hair just bigger, wider sounding. Nonetheless, Grand Tourer is very impressive in this department, so if you like hearing a lot of air in between the notes, if you like just an amazing depth, pinpoint location of the notes, just an outstanding imaging, so always sounding very 3D, like you're listening to binaural music but not to stereo music, then Grand Tourer is doing that pretty easily with everything. So it doesn't matter what music you are listening to, even bad mastered music didn't sound claustrophobic or closed in, so everything just was hovering outside my head. And that was very apparent on the Soloist GT. Compared to its smaller brothers, it was biased into a deeper Class A operation, so it provides more current for your headphones, it will better control the drivers of your headphones, and of course it will increase or decrease the stage size much easier depending on the music that is being played. In terms of frequency response, after swapping that Soloist 3X with Soloist GT, I've immediately felt a much higher quality type of bass. That signature Burson bass quantity is still present, so it was easily reaching those 20 Hz notes, it was easily sustaining those bass notes, but this time around it was just clearer and just ultimately more refined sounding in the bass. What's more interesting is that even entry to mid-level headphones just pick that up immediately, so Hypsos Sondara is not your bass Canon headphones, but GT made them more impactful in the bass. That was felt immediately. By far the biggest change was when I was listening to Odyssey LCD4. It made them just crazy impactful, crazy in terms of bass. It was both super clean but also landing just very strong hints on my eardrums. It made them almost painful at times with my electronica music. Its mid-range section felt just right from the get-go, so it was never recessed, it was not over the top, it was not overdone, just somewhere in the middle. Still, I find it slightly warmer, more natural sounding compared to all Chi-Fi amplifiers like those of Topping, SMSL, Gustard, and by a little bit more compared to all THX AAA amplifiers. So in my view, it has a natural mid-range, but this time around they went with a reference tuning, so it's more neutral in here. They tried boosting its quality as much as possible, but not its quantity. When it comes to treble, I'm getting a clean treble performance, sharp contours, defined leading edges. It will easily reach those 16 kHz notes, so the top octave pretty easily. Personally, I would pair it with linear and with smooth sounding setups, and I wouldn't pair it with bright sounding headphones or DA converters. Just imagine a clean treble delivery without sacrificing detail or naturalness, and that is pretty much how Grand Tourer sounded to me. It needs to be said that all Burson-made amplifiers aren't really rolling off treble information as it might happen with some transistor-based amplifiers, so you'd be getting a little bit more presence in the treble compared to, say, Ferrum or Flux Lab Acoustics Volot. I decided comparing these three top-of-the-line headphone amplifiers in a comprehensive way. For that, please check out my written review that I've put below or somewhere around here. It's on chapter 9 and it's a comparison that you shouldn't miss. Wrapping things up. Soloist GT is really an outstanding sounding solid-state amplifier, and it should be pretty clear by now how much joy it brought to me. I've enjoyed every single minute of it, and several friends just joined forces on weekends for some extended listening sessions and comparisons. In my case, their Soloist 3X already broke the boundaries of affordable hi-fi compared to their Conductor series, but Soloist GT just pushed everything much further. The family resemblance is quite big in this one because it sounds exactly as fun as engaging, but considerably more technical and cleaner this time around. All the quirks that I've experienced with Soloist 3X are no longer in place, and for all of the reasons combined, it's my pleasure awarding it with my highest gold award. Okay guys, this is pretty much it. If you are interested in a much longer analysis on the Soloist GT, please check out my written review that I put below. In case you want to support the channel, please subscribe to it, and as usual, listen to more music. Be positive, and I'll see you around. Cheers!